Hey, good morning, everybody. Robert Phoenix here, and it is a little bit later than I normally broadcast. I wound up getting up a little bit late today. Imagine that. Had I had a late night because I was dosing on movies. I was taking in some cinematic culture, or at least cinema, so to speak, and wound up going to bed later than I normally do because I was a little wound up. I took some herbal sleep supplements, and let's just say they worked really well. It's 9:55 here in Fredericksburg, Texas. I'm glad some of you are still hanging around, and we get to hang out today. Good morning, Anna. How are you? There you are. Yes, yes, yes. I know, I know, I know. I'm usually up and about around 9 a.m., but today just a little bit later, unfortunately. But hopefully, hey, Ethan, how are you today? Unfortunately, we'll, or maybe fortunately, we'll get some other people who might come in at a little bit of a later time. So, excuse me while I have a sip of my new coffee. That's good from my new coffee maker. You know what I did? I bought you can buy, there's no place to buy things here. You have to go to Walmart. So I went to Walmart and I got my French press coffee maker, and you can get a warranty on the coffee maker for $2. So just in case Jasper decides he wants to get a little frisky on my countertop, hey Lucy, I decided to buy the $2 warranty, so I get a $20 French press coffee maker replacement. This was kind of a beast. It's got a lot of metal on it. Hey, what's going on, Steven? Yes, better late than that. Netherworld. Yes, very much. Hi, Karen. Good morning. Good morning. There's Kathleen. Hey, Kathleen and Paula along for the ride. I feel like I feel like what was that show? Romper Room. Miss Marianne. Good morning, boys and girls. Oh, and there's Charles. Good morning, Charles. How are you today, Charles? And there's Eileen. Hi, Eileen. Good morning. You remember Romper Room? Didn't every city have Romper Room? I think every city had Romper Room. Miss Marianne, Romper Room. God bless the days of naive television. Now, Miss Romper, you couldn't have Miss Romper Room now. You couldn't have Marianne. Marianne would have to be transgender. It'd have to be transgender Romper Room. But that would give Romper Room a whole different kind of connotation, right? By the way, have you seen that RuPaul's now a man? It's like RuPaul has gone from being this kind of iconic sexual drag queen. It's like everybody else is becoming drag queens. I guess I'll be a man now. It was Miss Lois in St. Louis, the magic mirror. Yes, right. Oh, yeah. We also had Captain Satellite when I was a kid. He was the afternoon guy. You got to go on to Captain Satellite's UFO, his spacecraft, and you get to hang out with Captain Satellite. You get to punch all the buttons and the levers, and then they would have this clip from an old 50s movie of this ship taking off. And then the kids were in space, and then, of course, they watched cartoons in space. And, it's just like there's such naive television back. Everything now is so slick and overproduced. Flash Gordon was kinky. You know what was kinkier than Flash Gordon? Flesh Gordon, the X-rated version of Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon kind of wrecked my life. I snuck into a movie theater. It was back in the 70s where they had these soft rated X films or hard rated R films, and you could like sneak into them, like Fritz the Cat and Flesh Gordon. I saw Flesh Gordon. It wrecked me, ruined my life. The image of the Raper robots in Flesh Gordon ruined my life. Anyway, so it's kind of a theme we're going to be talking about today. There is a theme I'm going to be talking about. Talking about some new stuff as well. There's a lot of press around Mitt Romney. Mitt now is coming in as the golden boy of the Republican Party. He's there to take on and shake a stick at Donald Trump. You've been a bad man, Mr. Trump. You've been a bad man, Orange Man. Morning, Justice. But Mitt Romney's, I guess, niece or whatever, she's like a Trump guy. So she's like capping on Mitt. This is a very interesting time we're living in. I keep repeating it's my mantra. May you live in interesting times. Okay, so I'm going to talk about something, and then maybe we'll get into a few news stories. So I was watching Uranium One. It's all coming out. I hope so. I hope so. But okay. So one of the news stories I'm going to talk about has to do with a reporter who died. There's a lot of people who mysteriously die when they get a little too close to the truth. Nobody ever really questions their deaths now. Hey, Christine, what's going on there? So I was watching. I got into the superhero movie thing last night, and I was watching. The first one was Thor, uh, Dark World, which is the sequel to the first Thor movie. And I actually like the Thor movies. I was kind of into Thor as a kid. I bought a lot of comic books. Some comics I just kind of stayed away from because, I didn't buy a lot of Daredevil comic books. Thought that the art was kind of too dark and murky, and I don't know. There's just the Daredevil didn't really grab me. I wasn't a big Daredevil fan. I wasn't a big Superman fan either. I thought the storylines for Superman were kind of dumb. But I did buy Thor comic books. I was interested in the whole Asgardian thing because the costumes were kind of cool, and Loki had head stuff coming out, and there was of course Odin, and the Bifrost, and it was kind of a cool thing. I thought Thor was pretty cool. So I was watching the Thor movie last night, and it's kind of a typical superhero movie. The hero is a guy, he's a male. There's a female who is sort of the love interest of Thor, who is played by Natalie Portman, and of course in the comic book they are love interests, and that goes without saying. Is they're following the script of the comic. Now in this movie, she has something called the Aether, and she's discovered the Aether, and the Aether is the most powerful thing in the universe. The most powerful thing in the universe is the Aether. Okay, so she's got it, and this demon elf wants to get this Aether so they can actually take advantage of all nine worlds converging at one time. And so at that point in time, the demon elf can then use the Aether and then own all nine worlds completely. Okay. So even though Thor is the hero, he is the virile, strong god of thunder, and he swings that mighty hammer, right? And Jane, who I believe is the woman, that's her name, Jane, excuse me. She happens to be more powerful than Thor. She's got more power than anybody, which is why she's so highly sought after. Although, ironically, in the movie, she's like incredibly vulnerable and doesn't have the same kind of impact until the end of the film, where she uses her brain power to throw people in and out of these multi-dimensional experiences, these various worlds that the protagonist Thor and the bad guy, the evil elf, get thrown into back and forth. It's kind of amusing, right? So in the end, she's almost on the same plane as Thor because she's manipulating reality, but not quite, because it's Thor that winds up stopping this guy, but she clearly plays a hand. And then in the second film I saw last night was the second Iron Man film. I'm going. There's a theme here. Just stay with me. Iron Man is, of course, very powerful. He's the first sort of cyborg. He's the man without a heart, or he has a heart that's very weak. So he has all this armor around him, which is a metaphor for his masculinity, right? It's like he's a male. This is the metaphor for Iron Man. He's got a weak heart, and he's got all this metal around him, which is his psychological and emotional armor. And you got to get to him. You got to get to that guy that's inside. The industrialist who creates all these weapons for war, but there's a really sensitive human guy buried in there, and that's the dilemma that Robert Downey faces in that movie. And of course, he decides that he loves Pepper Potts, who's his girlfriend, not his wife. He loves Pepper Potts so much that he's going to elevate her to CEO and take his position in Stark Enterprises. So now we have the elevation of a female character who's at an equal plane with Tony Stark. And we see what's happening with Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, is that he's dying because palladium, which is powering his little unit there, is degrading faster and faster and faster. So he's losing his power while Pepper Potts is gaining power. Do you see what's going on here? This is a very interesting metaphor in a lot of ways for our times. right? So she's running everything. In fact, there's a scene in the movie where she totally cucks him, not as Iron Man, but as Tony Stark, and kicks him out of her office. It's like, I'm busy. I've got an empire to run, blah, 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 blah. Get out of here. You're bothering me. Go home, little boy. So he goes home and he winds up, he finds his new power. And his new power is in his childhood. Oh, where does that come from? It comes from his father, played by John Slattery, who is Roger from Mad Men, and it's his father. And there's a film in there, and there's all these interesting kinds of clues for him about developing this new power source, which he ultimately does. So he finds his power again. He finds his power through reinventing himself, or he goes to his childhood and he reconciles with his father, and then he's able to, through time, right? His father's not living, but through film, he reconciles with his father, and he finds that inner power. It's through the child, the relationship with the child and the father. He heals that, finds his strength again, goes out and wipes out the bad guys. And Pepper just can't handle it anymore. So she steps down from being a CEO. So now he's got the power again. It's an interesting kind of shift. Like, she has it for a while, then she gives it away, and she becomes sort of this more traditional feminine character. He assumes this more traditional masculine character. And why? It's because he found something from his past and he healed his relationship with his father. Oh, that's it. That's an interesting theme for a movie. That's not bad. That's, you can live with something like that, right? But what's also really interesting is the villain in that movie is played by Mickey Rourke, who is Russian. How about that? He's Russian. His name is Vankov, and he plays this mad Russian inventor. He was actually quite good. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but Mickey's got that. He's got that presence, and his face is all messed up from too much plastic surgery. So he looks like somebody who's really distorted and twisted. Whoa, we got a fog coming in here. What's up with that? Whoa, something happening here. Am I right about that? Let's see. Wow, that was weird. That was very strange. All right. Very odd. All right, so here we go. This is where I'm going with this now. All right. So these are films with men and women. There's a whole spate in superhero films. There's a whole spate now, movies coming out where women are the protagonists and men aren't even close to being in the picture. Now, this is a theme that started a while ago in movies. You could go back to the first Alien film, where Sigourney Weaver winds up becoming the hero of that movie. It's kind of a watershed film, right? Critics loved it. Oh, look who saves the day. It's not a man, it's Ripley, a woman, aka Sigourney Weaver. And she, creates this kind of new template for women in cinema, women being heroines, right? Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Women can be heroes. But now it's almost like de rigueur. Like, if you don't have a female who's a hero, it's just not going to work. Every single film now pretty much has a woman at the central theme who's the hero. She's stronger than a man, and puts the man sort of in the back seat. We're not even in the same car. Let me give you some examples. There are 3 movies out now. One's been out for a few weeks, and the other are just now starting to hit the theaters. The first one is a movie called Mortal Engines, and this is a film that comes out of the Peter Jackson camp. And Peter Jackson, of course, best known for his Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I happen to really like. And in this movie, it is a post-apocalyptic film. I'll read you the storyline here. This is kind of a brief synopsis. A mysterious young woman, Hester Shaw, emerges as the only one who can stop a giant predator city on wheels, devouring everything in its path. Feral and fiercely driven by the memory of her mother, Hester joins forces with Tom Natsworthy, an outcast from London, along with Anna Fang, a dangerous outlaw with a bounty on her head. So what happens in this movie is that Anna Fang and Hester Shaw are the ones that actually wind up saving the day. right? It's the two women. Tom Natsworthy, he's basically kind of written in as sort of the male prop. Men are props now in these movies. Men are props to be there to show how strong women are. That's what men do. It's like, oh, here's a guy. Well, he's a guy, but look at her. She's taking care of business. He's the one, that's got the cell phone out taking pictures. So this movie is a bomb, just to let you know. Okay. It is a bomb. It took them $100 million to make this movie. You look at this movie, it is a CGI masterpiece. All the computer rendering and the cast is, I guess, okay. You've got people like Hugo Weaving, um, but it is bombed. This movie has bombed. It has grossed so far. Now it opened on the 14th of December, but the gross so far is 15 million. The opening weekend was 7,559,000. This is for a movie that they spent $100 million on. This is going to be a monumental bust financially. Now, the cumulative worldwide gross, they say, is 63 million, but still, it's not even close to the 100 million that they're. But now the thing with these film companies that there's tons of write-offs with movies, so it's very hard to lose money, big money on a movie because of all the write-offs that are involved. But still, I would have thought that they at least would have been into recoupment mode, but they're not. And clearly, there's a bigger audience for this in other parts of the planet than the United States, because 45 million of that recoupment is elsewhere, not here. Okay, so we have this movie where these two female protagonists save the post-apocalyptic world with these giant rolling cities, these cities that are armies now. Okay, all right, so that hit in December on the 15th. Now we got two new movies coming out. The second movie that's about to hit is a movie called Alita: Battle Angel. Now, this is a film that's based on Yukito Kishiro's manga Gundam, also known as Battle Angel Alita, and it's being produced by James Cameron and John Landau. Interesting, John Landau. John Landau used to write for Rolling Stone magazine. And he said, one of John Landau's famous quotes was, "I've seen the future of rock and roll, and it is Bruce Springsteen." This is back when Bruce was put on both the covers of Time and Newsweek. Now, how does that happen? Is it because Bruce Springsteen was such a revolutionary, incendiary talent? No, it's because he had a really good publicist. Bruce wasn't bad. Battle Angel is directed by Robert Rodriguez, who hails from Austin, Texas. And this is a Cameron screenplay. So what about Alita: Battle Angel? Let me read you the premise here. Alita: Battle Angel follows the story of the titular Alita. So Alita is a female character, a disembodied core who awakens with no memory in, of course, a post-apocalyptic world, destroyed by a technological fall. Dr. Ito finds her and gives her a new body. So it's kind of a Pinocchio sort of deal, right? They later discover that Alita is more than what she seems and has an extraordinary past. She navigates her new life. She battles other machines who are empowered with skills. James Cameron has stated that he intends to adapt the spine of Yukito Kishiro's original manga with a specific focus on the first four books. He especially wants to include the fictional sport motorball from the third and fourth volume. In the narrative, the sport played an important role in the Alita story arc because it was part of her development as a character. Okay, so some of the people: Jennifer Connelly, Ed Skrein, Jackie Earle Haley, Michelle Rodriguez, who else? Casper Van Dien. Rosa Salazar is Alita. Okay, so this is what's happening. This movie is coming out. Of course, Alita is a female, right? So she's got the power to save the world. She's got all this, latent power that all she has to do is discover it. That she was made for so much more than what they originally thought that she was made for. There's a metaphor here. This is a metaphor for young girls. Look, you are her. She is you, even though she is a manga character and what looks like an android of sorts. You can relate to her because there's some physiological pieces that you can relate to. So young girls will see this, go, oh, look, she wakes up. She has no memory. That's because the memory of being a girl has been wiped out. Or at least this is the metaphor. Do you see this? It's like, let's wipe out the social and historical memory about what it is to be a girl. Have no memory. So when you have no memory, guess what happens? You get to sort of become something different, something new. Maybe you fill in the blanks with the past because you've got these latent skills. This isn't anything new, right? We can go all the way back to a film called La Femme Nikite, which is a Pygmalion story on steroids. And the female character, the first in the French movie, it was Annie Parallade, and then in the American, it was Bridget Fonda. And so there's this young woman who's a junkie, and the French decide that they're going to take her in, and it's a secret department of the French intelligence agency, and they basically wind up traumatizing her over and over and over again until she becomes a fighting machine. They reprogram her, right? So they eliminate her past to a certain extent. A little bit of it comes up. They eliminate her past, she becomes something new. She becomes this new entity. And of course, the entity is totally kick-ass and is going to save the day for the French against the evil drug dealers, evil arms merchants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Alita is a model for the new girl. There is no past. You don't exist. You have no memory. There's no historical memory of what it's like to grow up and have dolls and want to ride a pony or whatever these kinds of touch points are for a girl. So they're remaking the girl. They're turning the girl into something different, or the image of the girl into something different. Which leads me to the next film that's being released called Captain Marvel. Shall I read you the synopsis here for this movie? Storyline. Carol Danvers becomes one of the universe's most powerful heroes when Earth is caught in the middle of a galactic war between two alien races. Okay, so is there anything more with this that you need to know? Okay, so she is incredibly powerful. She's very, very powerful. She's more powerful than any man in the universe. It's kind of like Natalie Portman's character with the Aether, only Natalie Portman was just carrying it. She was just holding it. She had it in her little basket. Just get a tasket. She's Little Red Riding Hood with the Aether. This woman has it. Carol Danvers has it. She is from another race, another species, and she is totally kick-ass, and she's going to save the world. Okay, she's going to save the world. So here we have yet another example of a woman. It's played by Brie Larson, who was in that movie The Room, right? So now we have another film where there's a woman who's super, super powerful, and she's going to save the world. And the man is always going to take a backseat. Now we got Samuel Jackson playing Nick Fury. Samuel Jackson has been playing the same character in movies for the last 30 years. He's just been playing the same guy, maybe different makeup. Samuel Jackson, the best movie he was in was a movie called The Red Violin. You can actually see Samuel Jackson act a bit in that movie, but he's had one of the easiest acting careers out of anybody in cinema, and incredibly successful. The guy's in 2 to 3 films a year. Anyway, you see where I'm going with this? Now, I'm wondering what's really happening here. Is it because we've reached this sort of tipping point in terms of our gender roles, and that men are now, going to be starring in, I don't know, what are men starring in now? It's really hard to find like movies where men are like sort of righteously represented on some level. This is very hard, very difficult. But I think it'd be some sort of like role reversal, Mr. Mom kind of stuff. But they're not even visible. It's like they're just being kind of written out of the script. So what happens? Are these producers sitting down, you know, in front of Ball, and Ball is saying, "Oh, more like, oh, you need to start creating films with female characters who are stronger than the men." Oh, yes, yes, yes. Is Molek Ball, the real head of Hollywood? Is that who's writing the scripts? Because it's clear that there is an agenda here, and the agenda is to displace men. And what happens is that over and over and over again, if you see something over and over again, it's going to hit you on some level that it is true, and it may not be true. But if you're hit with it over and over and over again, ultimately you'll wind up kind of accepting it on some level, whether you're a man or a woman. And if you're a young woman, you're seeing this going, my God, look at this. This is great. Look at us, kick ass. We're stronger than men. Look, is there anything wrong with that message? I don't know. I'm all about balance. Let's have a little balance here. I've got 3 planets in Libra. Let's have a few films where men actually can, save a post-apocalyptic world. I guess we had those already. You can always remake them because Hollywood is definitely into remakes. But it just, to me, it feels like there is an agenda, and the agenda is men are getting written out of the script. This is it. And the script is a cinematic script, but it's also a life script as well. Now, women are going to have some challenges in the future. And while they're being propped up on a cinematic level, that yes, you can save the universe. Yes, you can save the world. Yes, you don't need a man to come in and wield what his his hammer, right? His hammer of thunder, mighty hammer. You can save the world. Here's what's really going on. Women, people in general, women are going to have a rude awakening. And this is a story from RT, and it's called "The Rise of Artificial Intelligence Could Hurt Women's Careers and Widen the Gender Gap." We'll see about that. I'm going to read you the story. It says the growth of jobs in emerging industries such as IT and engineering is set to disproportionately hurt women and the progress made in reducing pay inequality. That's according to a new report from the World Economic Forum. These are the Davos people. It found that despite the fact that gender pay gap, the difference between the average earnings of men and women, has been narrowing over recent years, they're still 202 years ahead before the compensation parity is finally reached. Well, Jordan Peterson addressed that. The process could get even lengthier if progress is not made in bringing women into the workforce, said the WA. This is the Davos people. Remember that. We're looking at these big structural changes, which I think are creating a drag. And what was a stronger momentum before towards gender equality. Saidia Zahidi, managing director and head of social and economic agendas, yes, agendas at the World Economic Forum. The gender gap is 3 times larger in the highly technical artificial intelligence AI industry than in other sectors, with women making up just 22% of the workforce. That is not only harmful for advancing pay parity and gender equality more generally, but also creates issues for the technology itself, said the report. If AI is programmed almost exclusively by men, there's a risk that gender biases will slip into machines too. It is absolutely crucial that those people who create AI are representative of the population as a whole. So when are we going to get when are we going to get transgender programming into AI? Somebody out there will bang their fist for that. We need more transgender engineers. They're not represented equally in AI. Well, there's only about, well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest transgenders is actually driving, one of the transgender people is driving AI. We can talk about him a little bit later. Okay. It is absolutely crucial that these people who create AI are representative of the population as a whole, said WEF's head of artificial intelligence and machine learning, Kate Firth Butterfield. A lack of diversity means we're not actually reflecting the population. We have a huge problem, she added. We're not actually reflecting the population. I mean, this brings up so many like bizarre questions. Does everybody have to be represented at all times in every single field? And do they have a little checklist? Because if they're looking at representing everybody through diversity, I mean, they got a really big task ahead of them. And of course, we know that diversity doesn't mean everybody. It means the group that a certain select few are determining who should participate and come to the table. That's what diversity really means. It's not everybody. Diversity isn't diverse. The WEF report pointed out that some industries and institutions are making progress in encouraging more women to become involved in emerging technologies. Those are the education and healthcare sectors and nonprofits, where the talent pool of women in AI outweigh men. Look at those fields. Look at those fields. Education, which is helping teachers, education, healthcare, healing, and nonprofits, unconditional giving. These are the fields that women are migrating towards. And so, therefore, the talent pool in AI outweighs the men because they're biologically drawn to those fields. Teaching, healthcare, nonprofits. Imagine that. Imagine that. Do you think there's something inside of these women that they naturally want to gravitate to because maybe just maybe there's a nurturing component, a loving component, a caring component inside of women? But no, we don't want that at a high level. Let's hammer it out of them. Let's give them film after film after film after film where they're either an alien or an android or a traumatized assassin who's ready to save the day and wipe out any memory of who and what women can be or are or were at some point in time. You see, that's really the message. I think that's the message. Because what this is all about is social engineering. And I watch a lot of TV. I'm not afraid to say that I do. I watch mostly sports. I watch a lot of commercials. And the way that men are portrayed in TV is almost downright insulting. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of the way that women were portrayed in TV to some extent about 40 or 50 years ago at an extreme version or extreme level. Uh, but this is all about social engineering. And the social engineering is about the diminution of the male and the remaking of the female. But yet, looking at what we're seeing here, that women are migrating towards education, healthcare, and nonprofits, it's still not working, right? Oh, it's okay. It's okay. And even Jordan Peterson points this out. Jordan Peterson points out that the equity gap in pay is almost non existent in the medical world because there are statistically now almost as many female doctors as there are male doctors. Again, it's a field that has, dare I say it, feminine traits associated with it: compassion, care, empathy, wanting to help, wanting to uh, heal. Right? These are theoretically feminine traits. Now, men can have them. I've got some of them. I love to cook. I work with people. Right? So there's a healing component. So it's not just limited to men and women. Let's be clear about that. However, that said, there's generally a locus of traits that belong to one sector and the other, one, you know, sex and the other. I know I sound like a caveman, but it's true. But what we're seeing is the social engineering on both sides. And that social engineering is driven by television and it's driven by cinema. That's what's going on. And just watch the movies as they come out. Who's the hero? The hero is a woman. And it's a woman from another planet. It's a woman who's an android, or it's a woman who's an outcast or an outlaw. You know what I'm saying? So I'll just read a little bit more of this. The diversity, including gender diversity, of views among innovators is vital to ensuring economic opportunities created by AI do not increase existing gender inequalities, and that new AI systems serve the needs of society at large. The report said. This is Davos. These are the people who have an economic and world and global agenda. And if you look at the graphic here, there's a woman. She's got blonde hair, and she's staring straight into the face of her future, straight into the face of our future. AI. I'll drop this into the chat room here. See if I can find you guys. Here we go. And let me paste this. You can check it out. That's the link. Let's see. What do we have here? It says, oh, there's Aiden. Hi, Aiden. How are you? You said Libra and balance, and I showed up. That's so funny. Ani says, with AI, there won't be work for anyone, male, female. Exactly. I've been saying this for a long time. AI will, it will fuel the next economic boom, and then it will ensure our obsolescence. Let's see, what else do we have here? Amazon was using AI to hire people, but had to stop because it wouldn't hire women. Oh, that's that's interesting. That's very interesting. Karen says, yes, I agree. It's time for balance. We've seen the pendulum swing both ways, but our opportunity to learn from we can be over the separation and drama and work together now. Asexual seems safer. Thank you, Rhonda. My son is in film school now. I have high hopes for better choices in movies. Well, I hope so too. You know, movie makers are often at the mercy of the marketplace in what the studios want to produce. If you want to make an independent movie, it's a much tougher road to go. Let's see. All the dumbed down deep state successes are all they convince of this shit. Movie receipts prove they're still the minority, and the audience is dying for this stuff. Misty says, you were so right, Robert. I wish I wasn't doing 10 things at once so I could formulate my thoughts on the subject. What else do we have here? Any others? It's a little bit of a controversial topic, I know, but you know, I just feel like, okay, I've got a son, and I have some skin in this game, and I just think that well, it's going to be interesting with Chiron and Aries coming back into focus again, and whether or not it's going to actually impact men and men getting into their wound, right? Because men are wounded. I mean, clearly that was one of the themes of the Iron Man movie. That he talked about his father, and his father didn't pay any attention to him. But he goes back and he heals that wound. It's kind of like the Iron John metaphor, or in from Robert Bly in the men's work from the '80s. So it'll be interesting. I think as soon as Chiron gets back into Aries, I'm going to have Zeus Yamanis on the show. That's Regina's husband. He wrote a book called The Spiritually Aware Male, and I think I'll have him on. We'll talk about some of this stuff. Tucker Carlson has gotten into it. It's funny because Tucker has nothing but girls, but he's talked about some of this in on his shows about the challenges that men have, and it's, you know, you'll bring this up and you'll say, well, men are challenged, and you know, people will say, oh, poo poo, men have all the privilege, men have all the rights, men have all the power. I would beg to differ. I would totally beg to differ. I would say men at a very high level in business have some of the power and have had some of the power for a while. And those guys are complete fucking sellouts, to be honest with you. What's happening now is there are a number of men in the technology industry that happen to be gay. And you know, you have, it's like, you know, does Tim Cook qualify as your typical male? I would think not. And I'm not, you know, there's no casting aspersion on gay males. They can have positions of power, whatever. It's a free, theoretically, it's a free world, but it's a different spectrum. You know, it's to some degree, it's different standards. It's a different place of origination in a lot of ways. And I just saw a speech that Tim Cook did. His name should be Tim Cook, president of Apple, Tim Cook. I mean, it was one of the worst speeches I've ever seen. And it was so drenched in politically correctness. It was terrible. I watched that speech. I was horrified about, if this is what Apple has in store for us vis-a-vis technology and vis-a-vis their ideas of what it's like to live in the human community or the planetary community. I think it's a very, very limited view based on some ideologies and philosophies I don't agree with at all. Because Tim Cook doesn't want anybody to be able to have a voice of dissent. And even the most minor voice of dissent could be considered hateful or mean or ignorant or cruel or racist or fascist or homophobic. In Tim Cook's world, there's no room for any kind of dissent unless it's the dissent that Tim Cook approves of. And that's the bottom line. So is this what we're talking about in terms of a position of a male in power? I don't think so. Stephen says Robert Bly changed my life when I enjoyed. Robert Bly was an important figure. He was an important figure. He was the father figure that a lot of men didn't have. He's a real life. I've always loved Robert Bly. His translations of Rumi were not the best translations, though. He made Rumi seem a little bit like a Boy Scout. If you want really good Rumi transmissions, check out Stephen Mitchell's stuff. Stephen Mitchell, I think, did some of the best work with the Rumi translations. So here we are. We're kind of at this interesting cross. See how I'm wearing my flannel today? See, this is all, I'm wearing a flannel shirt and I'm talking about this subject. He wants access to my son. He's a perv. Tim Cook is really weird, man. I wonder if Steve Jobs is like turning in his grave. I mean, the other thing too about Apple is that it has not been innovative at all since Tim Cook has been CEO of Apple. There's no innovation. We haven't done anything with Apple except more, facial recognition and biometric access to your freaking phone. There's no innovation there. The innovation is about human systems. That's what it's about. All right, I wanted to read you this story. Speaking of women, since we're on a theme here, here's a woman, courageous. This is a courageous woman. Are we reading about her? Are we hearing about her and her work and what happened to her? Her name is Bree Payton, and she died. Beautiful woman. Bree Payton, the journalist who broke the story of Robert Mueller's team deleting text messages, died very suddenly of a mysterious illness. Can we look at these incidences based on the facts as well as by recognizing patterns before we jump to either? Accept or reject possible explanations. All right, it's a very long link, but I am going to put it inside the chat box here. We're gonna get into her a little bit. What's up, monkey? If machines do all the production and no labor force is paid for, that means we're going to have less people and there'll be universal income and all that crap. Okay, there's a long link if you want to check this out. But I'm going to read you this story anyway. So here we go. Let me get back into it. Okay. Bree Payton was a writer for the conservative online news magazine, The Federalist, and a guest commentator on the Fox News channel. And she was a rising star. From the moment we started talking, I realized she was a potential star. Ben Domenech, the publisher of The Federalist, said in an essay on Saturday, she was raw, yes, but she could be honed. There's your Pygmalion story. She was eager to learn, to write, and to go places, not because of ambition, but because she wanted to change the world. That's slippery. That's a slippery slope, changing the world. She seemed unafraid to take on things that mattered, including breaking the hard-hitting peace. DOJ destroyed missing Strzok page text messages before the IG could review them on December 13th, where unlike the mainstream media, who later focused on the idea that there was no evidence that these text messages were deliberately destroyed, Payton leaned towards the conclusion that there was criminal intent in these deletions, a notion supported by Donald Trump. And then she died suddenly on Friday in San Diego. She was 26. I don't have any definitive proof for the notion that Payton was killed because she was going to disclose some type of sensitive information against the deep state. However, it must be said that the cause and circumstances of her death are befuddling enough for one to consider such an idea. My only intention is to explain the facts and allow you to draw your own conclusions. So here's the timeline. Wednesday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. Bree Payton, who lives in Washington, was in San Diego to be a guest host on a show on the One America News Network. Her last tweet was announcing to followers they could see the broadcast right now and responding to one follower who was watching it. So as of Wednesday night, all was well with Bree Payton. Here's her tweet. If you tune in to the OANN right now, you can watch me host Tipping Point. Okay, Michael Andrews, yes, I'm watching, and you're doing an awesome job with your pointed questioning and insightful reasoning. And once again, I will email the OANN that they should give you your own show. And she says, appreciate it. So that's at 9:06 p.m., and that's on the 26th of December. Thursday, the 27th, Bree was staying with good friend Morgan Murtaugh while in San Diego. Morgan found Payton unconscious in her bed around 8:30 a.m., as disclosed in this tweet. 24 hours ago, I found my friend unconscious and called 911. She's been in a coma since and really needs a miracle right now. Please, if you're religious at all, send prayers this way. We really need them. On Friday, December 28th, by Friday morning, Bree had passed away. This webpage for Bree on the Caring Bridge website which appears to be a site that gives updated information when people who are in hospital, seems to be where Bree's death was first announced. This was the page that Murtaugh had referred to in her tweet above, although at the time she tweeted it, it had obviously not been declared that Bree had passed away. There's no way of checking what it had said at that time because unlike Twitter, this website only shows the latest update. Currently reads as follows. Around 8:30 on December 28th, Bree's friend went into her room and found her unresponsive and barely breathing. She immediately called 911. Bree was taken to the hospital. She was admitted to the ICU, sedated and intubated, and doctors began working up a diagnosis. After a CT scan and hours of testing, they have determined that she has the H1N1 flu and meningitis. George stayed at the hospital during San Diego for a long time, but her condition worsened and worsened. She fought her illness with strength and passed on December 28, 2018. She'll be survived by her 4 siblings and parents. She fought strong and lived a life worth noting in the books. We're so incredibly honored to have known this wonderful human being. So here's the subtitle. Something just doesn't seem right. Trying to put some pieces together here. Morgan Murtaugh never mentioned noticing anything wrong with Bree on Wednesday night. So we were left to assume that a healthy, vibrant 26-year-old girl became fully incapacitated during a night's sleep without showing any prior symptoms, and then was dead 24 hours later with doctors saying that she had the swine flu and meningitis. Surprisingly, a New York Times obituary for Bree Payton said that Mrs. Payton had H1N1 flu, also known as the swine flu, and encephalitis, according to her family. So is it encephalitis or meningitis? And what is the actual cause of her death? One of these ailments or the H1N1 flu? I've not found an answer to this. While the cause of death does not seem to have been determined, several mainstream media outlets are taking the opportunity to use this to subtly warn people that they should remember to take their flu vaccine, which includes an H1N1 component. The way mainstream media writes about this story is to ask how she died, mention and go into depth about the diagnosis and the history of H1N1, talk a little about her life, and then leave the initial question unanswered. They sway the typical mainstream reader to believe that she died of the H1N1 virus without really saying it. Some hypothesize that Bree might have actually taken the flu shot that led to her illness, but this tweet from her a few years back makes it highly unlikely she would consent to any vaccine. Her tweet was, whooping cough, state urges more people to get vaccinated. And she has capital N-O-O-O exclamation mark, vaccines are from the devil. Now, do you think she would take vaccines? Take a flu shot? I don't know enough to say it's impossible that Bree Payton died so suddenly from a virus she had contracted naturally without any prior symptoms. But it just doesn't feel right. You would expect that she would have some pretty significant symptoms in the days prior. And add that to the fact that we have covered many stories of people who've died mysterious deaths, who all happen to be courageous, outspoken people who are willing to change the establishment and might have had some information that was damaging to the deep state and were willing to reveal it, as she showed in breaking the Mueller story. You can begin to understand the suspicions. There is certainly a pattern of untimely and mysterious deaths that have been on the rise in recent times, which involve people who are seen as a threat to the deep state. Several of these suspicious deaths have been made to look like suicides, but other forms of sudden natural deaths have been occurring as well, with some victims even be able to hint that they've been poisoned or otherwise targeted just before their deaths. The case of Reed Payton is uncertain and unproven, but all the signs certainly raise a suspicion of those who follow these patterns of events. The best we can do here is to put together the facts we have to access and allow you to consider and decide the most likely explanation for themselves, for yourselves. Very unusual story. Very now, could it be that maybe she didn't really die? Maybe she has been recirculated? I don't know. People ask me these questions sometimes. I guess we have to think about it to some degree or another. However, that said, this is highly unusual, but it does happen. It certainly happens. People who seem to be on the verge of bringing some truth to the surface wind up mysteriously disappearing or dying. Let's see what you guys have to say around this one. Let me check in with you. H1N1 are both connected to vaccines. Max Spears, that's right. Max Spears, yeah, Max had a bit of a drug problem there at the end too. That was a challenge for Max. Um, who was the journalist who was going too fast in his car? And oh God, what was his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. You guys know who I'm talking about. He was going to break some stuff around the U.S. involvement in the Middle East. What about Breitbart? Hastings, Michael Hastings. Thank you. Michael Hastings. There you go. Breitbart. Breitbart had a heart attack. And boom, done, gone. See you later. Interesting. But here we go. The reason why I brought that up, right? His accelerator was uncontrollable. That's right. Yeah, he couldn't stop his car. Yeah. Somebody had claimed that they had seen something that looked like a projectile hit Hastings' car before it actually exploded. I can't validate that or vouch for that. But the reason I brought that story up is because she's a woman. She's a woman, and she. What if she'd been on the left? And I'm not trying to. I'm not a righty here. I'm just trying to bring this up. What if she was on the left and she suddenly died? What if she had some damning evidence about Trump or Pence or something like that? She'd be in a lot more press. And I guarantee you they'd be making dot connections that she was offed by, Trump or whomever, right? Two for one, kill a truth teller and push the agenda. Yeah, they got a twofer for sure. They get to push the flu vaccine at the same time. Somebody asked me yesterday that there was something about Pence. They got something on Pence now. And I think they've had stuff on Pence for a while, to be honest with you. I think Pence has a bit of a Geppetto past. They've got a Geppetto file on Pence. That's what I think. I got a few more stories here that I was going to read to you today. Do I really want to? Okay, it's a nice flow. We're getting into a flow because we're talking about Michael Hastings and how his car. This is what Justice says. They can hack into cars now and run it off a cliff. Well, here we go. I got two stories here, and they all kind of fit together. Let me do this one story first, and then I'll get into the car thing. So, Michael Savage, who's probably one of the most influential, popular talk show hosts in America, He's not quite at Rush Limbaugh level, but he's not far behind Rush. Facing death threats, he heads to a secret location. I want to read this to you. City, state, and federal agencies are taking a look at vicious, hateful email sent a restaurant frequented by talk radio icon Michael Savage that threatens to shoot up the establishment if he's not denied future service. Remember back in November when Fox News host Tucker Carlson and his family were targeted and threatened by protesters? This is worse. Portions of the email sent to the restaurant state in all caps, I demand that you refuse to allow Michael Savage in your fucking restaurant again. He is a racist, white supremacist piece of shit. Don't want to listen to me? Well, I guess you're all going to fucking die then, because I'm waiting for the motherfucker, and I will wait and watch your fucking business. When I see him go in there, I'm going to start shooting everybody I can find. The suspect then gets very specific. I own 3 guns, and I can do some serious fucking damage. The email went on. I will kill as many as possible. Let's see. Kill as many of you racist, supporting, enabling white supremacists as I fucking can. Savage, in a telephone interview, said he has changed location, but he didn't elaborate. Savage also said, over the years, I've received many threats. I've chosen to ignore them. However, given the vile times we're living in, the specific nature of this threat, both I and some serious agencies are taking this threat very seriously. And well, they should. The email goes on to totter toward hate crime land. People will fucking die. I'm going to kill that fucking crypto Jew. But if you don't want your business to turn into a fucking shooting gallery, your customers get caught up in this, you better keep him out of here there, or else you're all going to fucking die. Unless you do what I fucking say, I'll really make you fucking famous. It was just a few weeks ago that Carlson was caught in the crossfire. Angry protesters who stormed his home in Northwest DC and smashed against the front door. So here we go. Is Michael Savage a truth teller? To some extent. To some extent. Michael's okay. I used to listen to him in San Francisco when I lived there. But clearly, he feels that he's under a threat, and it's probably valid enough for him to duck out. He's a health freak, too. Michael Savage was a nutritionist before he was a talk show host. And his son was the founder of Rockstar Energy Drinks, just in case you were wondering. Let's get back to cars, though. Cars that can be taken over remotely, accelerated, dangerous, unstoppable. Here's an interesting story. The revolt has begun. The revolt against the robots has begun. This is from Zero Hedge. More than 20 driverless vehicles in Arizona have been reportedly vandalized in the last 2 years, according to the New York Times, as enraged locals in the Waymo test market of Chandler have begun to revolt. Tensions began to flare last year after an Arizona pedestrian was killed by a self-driving Uber car, with residents slashing tires, throwing rocks, pulling guns on, and trying to wreck the autonomous cars. Some people have pelted Waymo vans with rocks, according to police reports. Others have repeatedly tried to run the vehicles off the road. That's a game, right? Let's see if we can fuck with the Waymo car. One woman screamed at one of the vans, telling to get out of her suburban neighborhood. A man pulled up alongside a Waymo vehicle and threatened the employee riding inside with a piece of PVC pipe. PVC is plastic. That wouldn't hurt very much. In one of the more harrowing episodes, a man with a .22 caliber revolver at a Waymo vehicle, and the emergency backup driver at the wheel. He told the police that he despises driverless cars, referring to the killing of a female pedestrian in March nearby Tempe. There are other places they can test, said the 37-year-old Eric Opolka, who was issued a warning in November after multiple reports that his Jeep Wrangler had tried to run Waymo vans off the road. In one instance, Opolka reportedly drove head-on toward one of the self-driving vehicles, forcing it to abruptly stop. Opolka's wife, Elizabeth, 35, admitted in an interview that Eric finds it entertaining to brake hard in front of driverless vehicles, and that she herself may have forced them to pull over for good yelling at. The couple says their hatred of self-driving cars began when their 10-year-old son was almost hit by a self-driving vehicle while playing in a nearby cul-de-sac. They said they need real-world examples, but I don't want to be their real-world mistakes, said Polka. They didn't ask us if we want to be part of their beta test, added his wife. According to New York University media theorist Douglas Rushkoff, people are lashing out justifiably as he compared driverless cars to robotic incarnations of scabs, workers who picket lines to take the jobs of striking workers. There's a growing sense that the giant corporations honing driverless technologies do not have our best interests at heart, said Rushkoff. Just think about the humans inside these vehicles who are essentially training the artificial intelligence that will replace them. Some of the attacks have been difficult for law enforcement to pursue, as Waymo emergency drivers told the Chandler police that the company prefers not to pursue prosecution of the assailants. In several cases, the police say Waymo was unwilling to provide video of the attacks. We were told that they would need a warrant in at least one case. So Waymo is like standing down. They're probably feeling incredibly guilty. They don't want any press around this whatsoever. Wow. So it's the revolt of the humans. It's begun, taking on the driverless cars of Arizona. So we've gone from Michael Hastings and his car, which was taken over ostensibly by AI, and people who are afraid of the fact that their lives in the incarnation of cars, driverless cars, are going to be taken over by AI, which pose a threat, not just existential, but also in reality, a present threat, a clear and present danger. In the case of the old Polkas, whose kid almost got hit in a cul-de-sac, and of course, the woman who was hit in Tempe, Arizona. And yet, Arizona continues to allow Waymo to test drive their cars, their driverless cars, all across the state because Waymo's paid them. And if you're a citizen of Arizona, that in and of itself should make you, at the very least, uncomfortable about the unilateral decision making of your so called government. And perhaps some of the angst and rage that you're displaying towards the vehicles might be directed in a civilized fashion towards the people who are making the policies that you're having to deal with at a street level. Let's check out what's going on in the chat room there. Who is a senator of AZ? Yeah, exactly. One YT channels claims that cars in paradise were intentionally stalled remotely so people couldn't escape the fire. Wow, that's intense. That's really intense. That was exactly my thought, Robert. Take it to City Hall. Arlington, Texas has a driverless trolley in their entertainment district. Well, how about that? Interesting. I say the Savage stuff is fake crap, possibly. Yeah, I think maybe it is. I'm not sure if it's coming from Michael's camp, but maybe it is a fake email, quite possibly. I'm curious about the envelopes delivered at the Bush funeral. So is everybody else. I'm sure QAnon has an answer for that one. Please, God, send a solar flare. Take the grid down, please. Yeah, you may get your wish. In which case, you want to have a car that was made before 1989, so that you can start it back up again. Just saying. All right, I'm out of here. Thank you for allowing me to be a little on the tardy side today, as I kind of rallied from a late night of cinema, but ultimately it was in the service of this show and for your edification and entertainment purposes. So I'll be back tomorrow. I guess we got the Friday Farcast tomorrow, and Steve and Chris are going to be on, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right about that? So it'd be me and Steve and Chris, and we're going to do a show about looking into the future, 2019. Everyone have a great day. Yes, there they are saying see you tomorrow. All right. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step on what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame. Take care.